Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our Grace Healing podcast today. And I have with me today Larry Reynolds and Deborah Reynolds. No relationship, same last name, but they're not related, just the same last name. Welcome, Larry and Deborah.
Thank you.
It's great to be here and welcome back for all of you that are watching.
Great. So what we'll do today, what we want to do today is talk about a topic of the fruit of labor, the fruit of spirit, the fruit of everything that we do. And there was a video that Larry did a week ago or so that we'll reference and link in this discussion. That is the basis of this conversation today. And for me, this video meant a lot because it showed me that we humans are driven in our daily lives by the fact that we want to see results, that we were looking for the fruit of our labor, of what we do. And if we go back in scripture and go back in philosophy even, we can find a lot of references to that. For example, in the Bible, in Psalms 1-8, it says, "You will eat the fruit of your labor. Blessings and prosperity will be yours." So basically instructing us, you labor hard, you labor well, and you will have the fruits to live by and to have. So, Larry, I'd like to ask you first, because you obviously did that video a week ago or so. The fruit of the spiritual fruit versus the physical fruit obviously is going to create some kind of a problem, an issue here that we deal with as humans.
Right.
Can you just kind of frame it and tell us a little bit so that we can start our conversation based on that?
Well, I should probably back up and kind of give an insight as to why I was being stirred in this direction. And we look to certain Christian ministers and other forms of faith that they're pointing at their wealth, saying, "See, we have this that shows we're in proper alignment." And that's where the question begins. It's like, wait a minute, the grace that you receive to bring you blessing and abundance does not show your alignment before God. It shows your grace received by God. So God's allowed provision to enter your life and blessing and increase and all these different things. But what happens is people start to look for the physical trappings of the earth as a way to measure, where is a teacher that's worthy of talking to? And they've missed the reality that they're measuring the wrong fruit. Just because a certain minister has a stadium filled with 70,000 people and drives a Rolls Royce and lives in a $44 million mansion, that's not a description of fruit. That, to me, what I've witnessed is that's a description of excess and self-elevation, and it loses sight of, well, okay, what is the fruit we're supposed to measure? How do we look into the world for all the things that we're seeing come out and say, okay, that one's truly speaking the truth of divine nature, not because of what he has or what they present, but how are they moving through life and what is the fruit that is manifesting through their nature? Are they living the living attributes of God? Are they functioning with integrity? Are they moving without judgment, but governed through discernment? So it's looking for the divine attributes within it. And I've seen so many people that have been taken into this prosperity mind teaching that are devastated 10 years into the learning process because they don't have the same Rolls Royce, the $44 million yacht, whatever it happens to have been, because they're looking for the measure of this physical fruit, not magnifying the nature of God's presence within them. And that kind of spurred the whole idea of the video.
Yeah, so before we even go into the spiritual fruit versus the physical fruit, let me ask you, Deborah, what have you in your life, in your, I don't know, maybe ministerial life or in your, what do you do as a profession? Have you experienced that? That problem of success, that you need to, have that fruit, show that fruit of success. And how did you deal with it in terms of weighing it against the divine measurement?
Well, for me, just that the God is so delightful that I I personally haven't had that desire to have too much. I've been a student of scripture for 45 years. And when I study it, I go back to the original Greek and Hebrew. And, man just takes things on the surface often. We have that tendency. So we see the word wealth and we think, oh, wealth, money in the bank, cars, and everything else. But if you really go back to the original meaning, it's an abundance spiritually. It's a wealth, and really it's being in that deep connection with the living God. So I've had people question me because I've honestly, God's provided, and I haven't charged much for many of the things that I've done. I've had a husband who worked a job, and I didn't have to worry about that too much. But I've had people say, I don't understand, you're driving this humble car for most of my life. And, well, it's fine for me. It's fine for me because I've experienced the fact that God is satisfying beyond anything else. Like you look in the Old Testament, King Solomon, wealthiest man that ever lived. And he wrote Ecclesiastes and said it's all. It's up to nothing because, he had all these things, he even had many, many wives and concubines and everything else, but it wasn't satisfying in the end. And bottom line, he says, there's only one thing that satisfies, and that's the living God. So,
Yeah, it's really interesting. I often think, what if I won the lottery? What if I had millions of dollars, all the beautiful things I could do? I could put all the worries aside,
yeah.
really focus on the divine, on the work that I want to do. But unfortunately, I think humans are just being drawn to, I don't know what I want to call it. But when you have that wealth and abundance coming at you as a human, you tend to misuse it, maybe.
Well, sorry. I think I know the key is our relationship again with the living God being centered there. Then if I put God first and then something comes my way and I present it and I'm looking through, in scripture it calls it the mind of Christ, having that perspective, then I will be less inclined to just indulge myself. Not to say that I live this austere life, but I try to bring it all to God. When I don't, it doesn't satisfy. And so it's these people that are driving, that have all this money because of their ministry. When this is such a responsibility, when God brings people our way and we're sharing his love, well, it's not just words, it's in practical ways. How are we blessing them? How are we meeting their needs? We can think of the orphanage that Grace Healing helps support in India. Well, it's not that we have an abundance here, but as God brings anything in, we look beyond. And that is key. It's not what kind of house we're in and what kind of car and all that, but what is the true fruit? What is the true fruit?
And also remembering, like what you're describing people and how they've seen a blessing, or like Andreas, you're mentioning, what if I won a lottery and I had millions upon millions of dollars available? What I've seen happen with people that have won lotteries or they've received success in their business is they've lost sight of who the author was.
Correct.
It wasn't their efforts. Because again, I've worked with tens of thousands of people and I've worked with individuals that are high integrity, high drive, high optimism, gratitude mindset, and they don't have the $1 billion. Yet I worked with another person that is angry, frustrated, angered with the world, and he's walking around with billions of dollars. So it's like, what's the author of this blessing, and how can I be a proper steward over these resources, whether it's the gifts of the presence of God within me? How am I stewarding this in such a way that it magnifies God's presence, not me? And what I see is there's a number of like Christian ministers out there that are known for like healing ministries and stuff like that. And they do like these striving things, where there's one of them that I can think of, and I won't mention his name or anything, but people will recognize it. When he opens up in the healing sanctuary, they have him like 30 feet off the ground with a door that opens in the wall, and he's wearing a white robe and vestment, and he's speaking prayers, and he comes off on a cable and descends to the altar. I'm like, now, realistically, they had to spend close to $300,000 to make that space function for this one little display that goes on at these healing events. And I'm sitting there going, was that the proper stewardship? But again, they want this perceived notion of, look at how we can use the wealth that we have to magnify us before God, instead of, how can I use the wealth that I've been given to magnify God, not me, before the others? So it's just, I think that, and somebody mentioned this from revelatory aspect, up will become down, left will become right, right will become wrong. And if you look at some of these things, they've kind of flipped the poles upside down. And they're identifying, look what we can do, instead of look what God has done through me. So if we set up all these contraptions and we're flying around like angels in the sky and we're not actually flying, is that representative of truth and integrity? And that's where I come back to, in my heart, with all of these things, we can look to the vibrational nature of what a person is presenting, not what they hold in their wallet.
Yes.
Go ahead, Deborah.
I just going to say, in scripture, it talks about the fruit of the Spirit.
Yep.
So when I encounter a new ministry, and anybody that in any position, really, I look for the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, humility, humility. Flying through the air on cables doesn't strike me as a humble act.
Right. Look at me.
So there's marks, because if we look at when Yeshua walked this earth, he didn't even have a place to lay his head half the time. He didn't own anything. It's humble. And in Philippians it speaks of how he set aside that the divinity, his right to have anything, and walked humbly on this earth.
Yeah, this is really interesting. It's really interesting, Deborah, that you mentioned humility and being humble. I had this noted down on my piece of paper here. And, I'm not I'm not a biblical scholar. I don't really know the Bible. But it appears to me that the role of humility and integrity plays a big role. And that, when humans nowadays are so drawn outwards, to listen to a ministry, to listen to advertising, to media, everything that comes at us, that we forget to go back inside ourselves, to recognize that divinity is within us. So I am wondering, for the two of you, I want to ask both of you is, how can one cultivate these qualities in a world that is so driven by materialism and the outside world? How can we really focus on finding the true value and the divine within ourselves, and just let go of everything that's trying to convince us to do different things, like ministries or any other thing that's bombarding us.
Yeah.
I can already hear your answer. Go for it, Deb.
Well, I'm actually giving a message in September and was working on it today. And this is it. It's if I want to get to know you, Andreas, and develop a relationship, what do I have to do? I have to spend time with you, not just be in the vicinity with you, but spend time, have conversation, listen, get to know what is important to you. It's the same because this amazing God, this creator God, called us to relationship. So investing in that, spending time, then, I find that the more time that I spend and I'm more aware of this presence within me and everywhere, because God is omnipresent, then I'm more inclined toward the divine way.
So maybe slow down, right? Slow down.
Yes, slow down. This lifestyle, this world, the lifestyle is too frantic. It's go, 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 go every minute. And now with social media and, all the technology, there's always something coming at us. And to set that aside, it has to be a deliberate action, taking time to just be, there's those that are not calling it God, they're calling it universe or whatever. But one of the things I agree with is they say, just be present. Well, if we're present, then we can connect with that divine presence. But when everything's coming at us constantly, so it takes work. It takes work in this world, but it's totally worth it.
So for what you just said, Deborah, I want to ask Larry, it's people that are not used to going slow, going within, reflecting. It's not easy, right? I mean, they may get lost.
Well, if they remember that this is not a journey you will complete. If you had 100% power to internalize and find God's presence, great. But most people are hovering in 1 to 5% of the power. God greets you in the 95% that you don't have. Yeshua will meet you. As long as you turn and look within and say, God, I just want to reach to you, God's already there.
Yeah.
And actually, of all the faiths, like you have a lot of biblical scholars and teachers out there in the world that have read every scriptural context from every faith practice on the planet. And one of the things that astounds them repeatedly is there is only one faith that speaks to the resident nature of God's presence within you. And it comes in the end of Ephesians chapter 2. At the end of that chapter, it speaks to the resident nature of God's presence within you. And so one of the things that people were looking for was like this concept of like, well, what are these other practices saying? Well, there's beautiful expressions. There's beautiful expressions of a divine wisdom and a divine presence and a divine reality, but they all continue to name it as like what Deborah just said, following towards God or following the universe. Universe is minuscule in the scheme of God.
Yeah.
So are we making a personal union with the living creator? Or are we looking into the universe thinking all the answers reside in the clouds and in the stars and in the galaxies and the universe, when the universe that we see with our visible ability to measure and weigh and do all the different things that we can do is really mainly like a cell of God's presence. It's like a cell within God, not the fullness of God. And I think what happens is humanity has lost sight of that. So this idea of surrendering and giving within and developing a personal remembrance of God is only in the process of seeking that. Seek and you will find. So if you do look within, and again, you can only muster 5% strength to be the one to reach toward God, Yeshua will cover the 95% and complete that desire you hold within your heart, and you will know yourself as God within you. You will recognize the living presence of Yahweh within, and you will begin to discover attributes of yourself that you're not comfortable with, that you used to dwell in, that you're finding that were rotted fruit in your past, and you start to pursue the alternative fruit that is the living presence of God within me. Like Deborah said in the previous answer, the fruit of the Spirit. And right now, like you're asking, Andreas, there is so much happening on this planet. And there's so many people espousing different answers and thoughts and things to look at and things to study, and where do we get our answers from, and who do we measure as the one holding the truth? You will know them by their fruits, is what it says within a scriptural reference. But again, what happens is people fall into this trap of hearing the word fruit, and they think of a physical manifestation of something. And they get lost on the fact that the fruits of the Spirit are, as Deborah named them, they're the living presence of God fully manifested in our lives. And people are still looking for the Rolls Royce, or they're looking for the Cadillac, or they're looking for the different things that are out there. And again, they're not looking for the subtle reality that, wait a minute, God is more than this.
Oh, yeah.
And again, God is love, joy, peace, forbearance. And again, if you touch God's presence within you, all of a sudden you are forbearance. If you touch God's presence within you, you are patience. You are kindness. You become the goodness that is God within through faithfulness, trust, gentleness, self-control, purity, compassion, selflessness, and humility and integrity. But then we have to look at all of this, and we recognize that even science today is starting to be able to measure the frequency of things. And one of the fascinating aspects of that is if we're really looking for the fruit of what is here and what is my presence exuding toward the earth, the highest frequency of anything measured, most people think, oh, it must be love. Oh, no, it must be charity. Oh, no, it must be compassion. But the actual highest frequency measured is the word authenticity.
Mm.
So if we come to the realization that, wait a minute, if I was truly to be authentic to the gift that precedes my physical form, which is the reality that God established me to house his living presence within me, and I choose that with authenticity, I can only be the fruits of the Spirit. Because through authenticity, it's only going to allow me to express divine love, not the love I think I can give.
How do you choose authenticity? How do you choose
What's that?
to be authentic? How are you authentic? How do you choose authenticity?
Well, again, in your own heart and measure, we all know when we've fallen short of authenticity. We all know when we grab the lying spirit, we place it in front of us, or we know when we grab like a refinement of the history and alter it for the sake of our personal gain. Now we've shed ourselves from authenticity, and we've fallen away from the true authentic self that is the one that is seen by God in this moment at your higher state. So then we move ourselves down in measure from that authenticity because we haven't developed our personal union awareness of God within us. When we come to that full authentic awareness, like you're saying, wait a minute, I need to stop and think for a moment, or I need to stop and breathe. Wait a minute, let's breathe. So when we get into situations in the world, people are not permitting themselves the time to search first God within them before they respond, because they think, oh, I need to respond and answer the question immediately. Instead of, wait a minute, that's a good question. Let me take a breath for a moment. And we breathe, then we search God's presence first. And then we can honestly say, from authentic realization of God's presence within, I'm going to choose this direction, which is toward God, and convey truth in this moment, to convey the highest possible blessing that God might be realized through me, not the past experiences of my life, not the past abuses, wrongs, damages, whatever that came forth. I would rather bring forth divine wisdom in this moment so that they would know personally that they themselves are housing the same God that is the author of all creation that I've discovered in my personal union. But as you say, it does come with a personal investment. That's the hard part. People do not permit themselves the time, or in some cases don't see themselves worthy as coming before the presence of God and sitting to recognize that personal union.
There's a couple of things that you just mentioned, a couple of words that I want to kind of talk about. One is manifestation, and the other one is attachment, attachment to outcome, and then authenticity, because I think they all play together somehow. Because, there's so many teachings out there that say you can manifest things if you do it the right way, if you think the right, the law of attraction and all these things that are out there.
Yeah.
But then there is these old teachings, and I'm looking at the Bhagavad Gita, which often referred as the Gita, 700 years ago, Hindu teaching, scripture, that says one of the central teachings of the Gita is the importance of performing one's duty without attachment to the result.
Mm-hmm.
So, which to me means it being in love with what you do, being authentic in what you do and what you perform in your life, what you're called to do, or what your talent is, without being attached to, is it going to be a good result or bad result or whatever the result may be. So my question kind of is, all right, so so we are kind of like trapped in this world here where we think, oh, wow, okay, I have free will. I can do things, I can choose things, I can do it the authentic way, or I can do it another way. I can go towards a result that I desire, that I want to manifest, or I can just be open and just let the divine come in and give me the result, whatever I want, and enjoy the work that I do. So I'm a little bit lost in this. I'm not sure. Is there a direction we can go? How can we tell people to go forward and not be lost and not be? I know it's a long question, so.
May I answer that?
Please, yes, I could see you. I could see you bubbling.
well, it all, and Larry's going to laugh, but it always comes back to God first. It really, it truly does, because until I connect and I find my true identity in God, surface, I'm concerned of what other people are thinking. I tell people, we record all these messages being raised and being in this society, and much of it's not true. And as we encounter God within, those untruths, those lies are revealed. And as they're revealed, to turn them over to God and receive the truth, replace the lie with truth. Because if you don't replace it, it's going to rise its head. And Yeshua said that, you clean out a house, drive out the demon, drive out the lie, whatever you want to call it, and leave it empty. What happens? Well, in time, oh, look, it's empty. And it comes back with 7 times worse. And I've seen that over and over in lives. And so it's always, do I want to be authentic? How do I know what authentic is? Well, I have to take time and connect with my God and find out who I am, which happens to be his daughter. And he especially fond of me, she especially fond of me. So when I'm centered there, then the real me comes out, which is God prompted. It's me and God. There's in the Psalms that in the Bible it'll say, teach me your ways so I can follow your path. Well, I went back to original and it was flow into me, fill me up so that I can follow that flow. So again, as Larry's been saying, it takes time. And, we can't decide, okay, somebody listening to this can't say, all right, well, tomorrow I'm going to sit, and take so much time, but sit with God and say, help me to develop this, help me to find the time, show me. And I'm going to start with whatever amount of time, in the morning, and then incorporate it bit by bit. And in time, it's not work. It's not even an exercise anymore. It becomes a way of life.
Yep.
So that, wherever you are, whatever comes, your thought is going to be more quickly to stop and listen and breathe and know the right way.
Then be the divine response.
Yes. Yeah.
So Larry, hold on one second. I want to just follow up with Deborah. So in your life, how did that manifest? What you just described, that relationship with God, with the divine, that way of living. And I think you do some kind of counseling work, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
So can you maybe give an example of how you experienced that?
Yeah. Well, I spend a lot of time with people struggling with addiction, or people who love someone that struggles with addiction. And within my own family, there was a lot of that. So I got personal experience. And when I learned to look to God, then I could learn to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And the more I practice that in my own life, then when I spend time with anyone, and it's amazing to me, I could sit on a bus and the person that's going to sit next to me is going to have some issue that, they're going to be telling me about. Okay. And I just trust God, and the things that come out sometimes, you're like, whoa, that was pretty good. I know that wasn't me, at my age, I've had a lot of life experience, but it's nothing compared to the wisdom and knowledge of my God. So I don't have to depend on me, which is very liberating. I just, as I was sitting down today, preparing, thinking about the message that I'll share in September, and then thoughts come. Oh, okay, all right, I can line this up. And I want to be authentic. Wherever I go, there's people with expectations. I do not want to let that govern me. I really want to be authentic and speak truth. And God is truth, pure truth. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. And, often Larry, I'll let you talk in just a minute.
Yeah.
Often often it is the desire to satisfy the expectations of other people.
Right.
That draws away from that, what we are really authentic about, right? Yeah. Larry, I know you have a lot of thoughts to share.
Oh, yeah. Well, I actually wanted to go back to a practical application, just like what you did with Deborah here, where she's given a practical attachment to how could this be a measurable result in the work that you do for others or whatever it happens to be. One of the things that she mentions is the time that people need to invest in God, the time that they spend in God's presence. But remember that even the aspect of time when you touch upon God's presence goes away.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's going to take this insurmountable task of investing great measures of time. It's just a matter of committing that in this time I choose God.
Mm-hmm.
And just like she mentioned, anytime you start to weigh a thought or an action, all of a sudden God is the blessed result. Therefore, I don't need to hang on to the consideration of what am I manifesting. It says, align myself with God. I'm already evidencing that which is God, which is the completed result of the actual highest result of what I thought I desired. When I surrendered the desire, when I came upon the recognition of manifestation for a certain result, when I become personal in my union with God, I recognize that, oh, I have an awareness of something that's going to take form. I trust and return it to God, and then I move as God. And interestingly, the image or thought that came to us just manifests in front of us because we're choosing God, not our desires. So when we come to things like, let's go to a practicality aspect of how people do this through like vision boards, or they get together at a seminar and they're all going to manifest a certain result. And again, I've dealt with loads of people that have done those types of events. I used to run those type of events for different business models that I worked with, of doing visioning and all the different things. And what I watched was, there was a moment where collectively the group would come into this frequency awareness of God presence bigger than the group. They would start to be stimulated in thoughts, ideas, and creativity. And what would happen in that moment, there would be these beautiful thoughts or images given to each individual, and they would start to search and find images and stick them to their vision board and all this stuff. And then it all of a sudden became physical. Not just the nature of seeing what was changing in their lives. And like some of them were saying, I'm no longer locked within the dependency of addiction. They were conveying messages like this. Then all of a sudden it became the Cadillac they wanted. And then it became the building that they wanted, a certain home that looked a certain way. And then sure enough, a couple years later, they're sitting there looking at this house going, oh my God, I manifested this.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh my God, when I was gifted by God the vision of the completed result, I was moved in such a way that I recorded that image so that I might see it one day. It wasn't that they are manifesting it. They just had a moment of grace where they touched upon the presence of God. That's why when people look at their vision boards, they have 50 or 60 items on there, and they can point to 3, 5, 7, or 10. Not all 70. Because what they did was this moment of elation, this drive, and this feeling of sensation going, wow, this is beyond me. On the 5 to 7, they magnified it into 70 additional things because they thought they were riding a wave of manifesting power. 20 years later, they're pointing at 7 done, and they're distressed, saying, what am I doing wrong in my life? I haven't got the other 67. And I'm like, no, that's not how manifestation works. So again, it's like what you're asking, Andreas, about the idea of manifestation without attachment to the result.
Yeah.
If we enter upon the reality that we are going to choose a holy union, a personal union with the living God, we won't be defined by self-image. We will become divine image. In becoming divine image, we will begin to evidence fruit of the Spirit through our nature and our actions, which will attract physical manifestation upon the earth to show additional blessing. And then from this ground, we will always recognize the author of that blessing, not saying, look what I manifested. It will be, look what I was blessed to witness.
Yeah.
Look at the wonder of our God that manifested these results years before I was born, and I was blessed to touch upon a vision of him 10 years ago and have this clear understanding of what I was to register upon my vision board, not what I could manifest, so that I could look at it and say, look, God showed me this. God moved me to this. God manifested this result, and God knew it in the time he blessed me with the image 10 years ago. So then if I add in other things that would be nice or wantful or desiring, and they don't manifest, I'm not attached that they must come about. I'm celebratory of the 7, not the 63 that are missing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I've seen so many times in these manifestation forums, is it sets these people up for failure because they're sitting looking at it wondering, why didn't the 63 happen, instead of celebrating the wonder that 10 years ago, in a personal moment of divine intervention, they were able to touch upon the true manifestations that would occur in 10 years, 12 years, 20 years, whatever. And they wrote it down. And instead of looking at that saying, wow, my God is so amazing. Not only did he know it, but God gave me through her wisdom the ability to see it, put it on my vision board, and there it is. And look at that. Look at how amazing God is, not look what I manifested. And that's just where my heart rests on that whole idea.
You know, I think what comes to my mind right now is maybe we're thinking too much, too deeply about this. You know, I'm thinking about next weekend, I'm flying up to upstate New York with
Yeah.
my wife, and we're going to celebrate her dad's 90th birthday. So there's going to be about 80 people coming, big party celebration. And I'm in the process of putting a slideshow together with all the pictures of the whole life, you know, from when he was like 20 years old to now, when he was 90 years old, with all his children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, all the nice things that happened. And if I think about my parents-in-law, they don't have these deep thoughts that we just discussed right now. They're Catholics, you know, they go to church every day. They pray, they believe in you know, the prayer that will help them, but they don't think about it deeply. They just live.
Right.
And here they're 90 years old. So are we thinking too much about it? I mean, shouldn't we just live? And you know, like they do, and I don't know. I'm just asking the
Well,
question.
in that respect, I would see that, yes, we could choose to do that. And I would never put down anybody that makes that choice to walk and live that life in that manner. And I am also not one that I would ever impose my understanding of faith through trust on anybody else or impose my journey on anybody else. What I am led to offer is, like, in my calling is to become more deeply aware of God within me above the idea of even relationships upon the earth. God first in everything that I am. That's my calling. I don't expect that every human's going to have that calling. But I know that there are people on this earth right now that have that desire but can't quite reach that step that they need to make to immerse themselves in it. So it is about sharing the nature of the things that we've walked and lived, sharing the aspect that these things are out there, and also reaching into some of those constructs, like those groups that are actually being taught manifestation results and worldly abundance. And then they're totally dismayed by the fact that, why are 20 other people in the group succeeding and not me? Because they've lost sight of the fact that if they had sought the personal union with God, they would know that they're not in a wrong place. They haven't done something wrong. They haven't done anything bad. They are just manifesting a journey that they agreed upon even before they entered the womb. But they'll only discover that if they learn to go to God first. So if there's 100 people at one seminar and 80 of them are seeing results and 20 aren't, and of the 20 that aren't, there's like 5 of them that are really hurting because they're the sheep that's wound up in the thorns that I got to go help. They're the ones that I want to reach to and say, listen, it's not that you're doing something wrong. You have a personal union with a holy God deep within you that is the most powerful of all creation. Align yourself more deeply with that. Get rid of any shame, guilt, or self-doubt, and embrace the holy truth that everything that you've discovered, witnessed, encountered, or experienced can be utilized by God as you align yourself perfectly with God, and you will see the manifest result of the spiritual fruits that are God's presence within you. And it will shift and bring forth blessings that you can participate with instead of things that are happening off to the sidelines while you think you're moving through life at a lesser stage. Now, I am totally blessed at where I am, regardless of what's not present within my life, because I know there is one thing present in my life that cannot be taken. God lives and dwells within me.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's wonderful. And
Yes.
that's how you live it. And I want to ask Deborah, what's your thought about what I just said before, just going with the flow? Some people just go with the flow and they're happy, they live long lives. And I mean, have you some experiences that you can
Oh
share?
yeah. Yeah. I could just look at some extended family and they're just, they're living their life. And I mean, if they have a crisis, they call me for prayer. But otherwise, God is there somewhere up far away, but they're fine. And I don't feel called to change anybody's mind about anything. I feel called to whoever comes across my path to speak into their lives and plant that seed of hope and encourage them. There, as Larry just said, there's this God within that if you tap in. Now, some are going to do it just more surface. Some of us are called to be just really get the as much as possible. And that's, but everybody has their own path. You know, what's the path they have for this life? Well, anybody that I can bring hope to and come alongside and say, shh, let's just slow down, let's look, you know, and quite often they just want to focus on the negative, but
Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
Isn't there a place in scripture that says some will be called?
Yes, absolutely. More than one place. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so, and that's where I feel organized religion has failed because we, one size fits everybody, and I've had people say, well, I'll never have what you have. Well, what do you want? What is your desire? If you desire that deeper walk, then, in scripture it says, seek me with all your heart and you'll find me. Boom. So how much do you want? And it's not me to judge anything, just here's this God who's very much in love with you, is pure love, and you can have as much as you want,
Right? Can I add to that right there?
Yeah.
Here is a God that loves you.
Mm.
Oh my God. Think about the vastness of creation.
Yeah.
God is so vast in nature that creation can't even be numbered.
Yeah.
Yet, God is so vast in understanding, omnipresence, and omnipotence, has absolute awareness of every hair upon your head,
Yes.
every trace within the lines of your skin, every single thing, every detail, every aspect, every consideration of your being, down to the core of your existence. That even through the vastness of creation, God being so vast has not lost sight of you. If you can permit yourself the time that you describe of sitting with God's presence and allowing that to be your one place of grounding presence. I don't ground with the earth. I go to God first, then God grounds me to the earth because God is present within the earth. God is present within the universe. I find my grounding in the nature of God's presence, which is different than a lot of the teachings that are out there right now.
Yeah.
And beyond that, as we develop in that personal realization that, oh my God, God is so amazing, so far beyond understanding and comprehension that he even knows me in this moment. Do I wish to participate as God would have me, or do I want to continue to participate the way my world had taught me to be?
Mm-hmm.
And then we would see this translate into how we look at things of the world. So we're back to the practicality of what does this do to help us measure where do we look in the world to see God's presence evidenced within the nature and fruit of what people are doing, living, action, the result of the measure of their works upon the earth. Where are we actually seeing that? And then as we look to friends, loved ones, and different people experiencing all the things revealed on the earth, do we see them aligned with a godly nature, or are we seeing them aligning with the lesser state? So here we have like political events unfolding on the earth. It's been astounding to me that as I've watched, there are people that call themselves on a spiritual awakening journey, yet they're celebrating the near assassination of an individual. I'm like, that does not show fruit of God.
Correct. Yeah.
So regardless of what the person's feelings are about the individual, If they have a problem with the individual in that ground, then they should pray increase of the opposite of the problem they witness in the individual. So if they see spiritual arrogance, if they became close to God within themselves, oh God, thank you that you bless your son with deep and humility. They would be praying for him instead of celebrating the opposite harm.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by the measure of it. So if we're hearing reports in the media, because there's a lot of stuff going around right now about like aliens and different things like that, and every single thing they present in the media is framed immediately through fear.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. Oh my God, look at it. This could be disturbing. Oh no, this could be problematic. Oh my God, if we really shared this information with the public in totality, it would crumble civilization. No. If it's presented in the construct that no, how beautiful would it be to recognize that not only is God vast in the nature of how humanity sits on this little, who was it? It was Carl Sagan that did this amazing speech about the blue dot. Because when Voyager was sent out in the 70s, Voyager turned around outside of, I think it was either Jupiter, I think it was just beyond Jupiter, and it took a picture of the Earth. And it was the tiniest little blue dot in the middle of black vastness in nowhere. And he was talking about the importance of recognizing that on that little blue right there, that's where people are getting caught in conflict, hatred, destruction, war, complaining about boundaries and limitations, instead of recognizing that we are merely a blue dot in the vastness. How can we magnify the nature of this blue dot to be the living divine, to be the living expression? And it was wonderful to help people look back, because it was even bigger than the image when the astronauts provided the image of the Earth, because it kind of made people stop and think. So if we come back to the message, like if the media is presenting us stuff, oh, this will be unsettling to the Earth community. It's like, no, it should be exciting. If we look to the vastness of God, we should celebrate, look how vast God is. Not, oh my God, there's another race within creation. So media wants to present it in misery. In other words, rotted fruit, fear, condemnation, inability to rise up and receive the message of truth or the understandings. And it would be wonderful to see people awake to the reality that if I have a personal recognition of God within me, all these messages of fear, motivation to diminishing won't lay hold within me. The fruit in we will be, it just rolls off my back. Water off a duck's back. I see the story they present. It is not of truth, and I choose the truth that is God within me. Whatever rises, I have no fear of death, for there is no death. There will only be birth into new life. So if something does emerge that could potentially, quote, take my physical life, I'm in the presence of God. In this life, the birth into new life, the continuing the new form, and there is no fear. So all of a sudden we see that the rotted fruit being presented by a media format can't lay hold within me, because my island, my provider, my sustainer is God, not the next word of the talking head on the news program.
Yeah. You know, something you just said brought a verse to mind. Perfect love casts out fear.
Exactly.
Perfect love casts out fear. And so if we're centered there, and I just want to say, we don't immerse ourselves in all this negative. You know, I'm selective. You know, we were with a friend this past week and just immersed in constant news, and it's all fear-based. It truly is. You know, and but if we're centered on God, who is love, pure love, then we're good.
So I'd like to ask you, Deborah, we're going to wrap it up in just a few minutes, but so let's bring it now down from this high-level discussion we had to back to reality. I mean, you know what I mean. Grace healing as a community, as a service to people. What do we do? What do we offer? In your view, Deborah, what does grace healing play for you? How can we help people make that transition of understanding to transmute from that fear to the love? How have you experienced it, and how we are doing this?
What's been my experience with grace healing?
Yeah.
I've encountered love. I've recognized God within the ministry. I don't go into anything blindly. I go into it with prayer, and I listen and see the fruit. And I see humility, I see love, I see peace, I see joy, self-control, gentleness. The verses right before that in Galatians list all the things that are out there in the world, the strife and the anger and the fear and bitterness. And I don't see any of that at all. I see grace at work in grace healing. And I'm very grateful that I get to hang out with you people and experience more of that. So
That's
It is
awesome.
awesome having you.
Yeah, and it's the same for me, having been involved for the last 6, 7, maybe 8 years. I stopped counting. It's just a wonderful experience, and it's a mind-changing, heart-changing experience. And for me, it's simply being able to slow down and really look within. I mean, in very simple words, this is what it is, without getting too technical about it. And for anybody that's listening now to this message, we recommend that you go to our website, gracehealing.org, or gracehealing.video, which is a direct link to our YouTube channel, where we have all these videos. We have over 300 videos now with different topics that we discuss that can be very helpful in your journey as you explore, that connection with the divine, so you can get rid of that fear and focus on the love, which makes life so much more enjoyable. And I'd like to kind of summarize what I heard today. We spent about an hour
Awesome.
together. Can I do that, Larry? I know
Go
you
for
like
it. Yeah.
that. You like that when I do that, right?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
So I very simply, not to discredit any religious affiliation that people may have
Yep.
with the community at all. That's not the point here. It is really about differentiating between two emotions that people have, and that is love or fear. That's really the only two that drive everything. And fear is what the world, as we know it now, presents to us. In the media, it tries to direct us into different directions, and it's all fear-based, like what Deborah just said before. So the world tells us you must manifest. You must find ways to manifest your success and your fruit in physical forms, be it in a career that you can achieve, or money that you can make, or successful marriage, or whatever it may be. The fruit is physical and material. Whereas on the other side, when we look at the love spectrum of the emotions, we have that God awareness that we're all seeking. And many people think God is an elusive power out there somewhere in the universe that we need to tap in, and not realizing that it really is within us. All we need to do is turn within us to find it. And that fruit that we find, that satisfaction, that love that we find in relationships we have with people, in the work that we do, the talents that we have been given, have been graced to fulfill in this life, that's, in my opinion, the true fruit that we're seeking. So that's kind of, that encapsulates what I got out of this discussion. Larry and Deborah, you want to add to this before we wrap it up?
honestly, I think you said it very well.
And I would just say for people to, and I know the love that Deborah and I share, and Andreas as well, and all of us throughout this process within Grace Healing, as she said, we're not here to change people.
Mhm.
We're here to assist people to find their personal union with an author of creation that's indefinable. And if they find their personal union, they will discover and be empowered in their journey instead of subjected to it. Because every one of us witnesses things in life. We can either go on this path in a way that we see it like kind of as a victim, as things happening to us, or we can connect with the most powerful force within creation within us and be positioned to observe it.
Yes, yes.
And as we've said many times in other videos, or dealing with how people measure wealth and different things like this, if a person can honestly touch the presence of God within them, they become the living light in darkness. They become the calm in the midst of the storm. So that even as people are dealing with the turmoil of society and the turmoil of politics and the turmoil of disease and different things that happen upon the earth, all of a sudden they're at peace. And I encounter this constantly when I've been with people in the hospital that are about to be birthed into new life, as I'm invited by a family to come and sit with somebody that's about to transition into new life. They call it death. I call it birth into new life. And as I sit there, there's times where I've been in those rooms and not said a single word, and just found the family shift to a place of peaceful awareness. To be sit there and just holding the person's hand, because the family didn't even think about the fact that, what if I just held her hand? Because they were so invested in all the things they had to do and get in order, blah, 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 blah. They didn't center into the breath of God's presence and become the calm in the midst of the storm. They were bandied about by the winds and slapped into trees and bumped into buildings, and they were being thrashed around by the storms of the earth and the winds of the earth, forgetting that the very answer was God's presence within them. Sit, be with me, draw to my daughter. Sit, be with me, draw to my son. And then you become the living attributes of God, the fruit of God, for the sake of this person about to make transition, for the sake of this family that will remain in their stead. And we can become that place of peace, that refuge, and be all things to all people in all settings, because we aren't ourselves. We surrender and become that which is God within us. And the people are elevated, increased, and not consumed by the thought of death, but celebratory of the process of life and its birthing into new form. Because the reality is, every single one of us is coming to that. That's the one inevitable thing about life.
Yeah.
There will be transition.
Yeah.
So we can either transition in that form in a blessed state of realization as we are approaching life. And I can't tell you how many people I've sat with in their moment of transition in fear and regret.
Yeah.
Praying for them in release of regret, release of fear, release of doubt, and a recognition of God within. And all of a sudden they're smiling, breathing deeper instead of real shallow. And they're talking about their relatives they can see with clarity. And they transition in peaceful transition instead of distress. So I believe that our personal union, coming back to Deborah's words, is that's where it's all beginning. Returning to God within, the personal union of God within. And again, I don't want to put down anybody's belief process, but there is a significant difference between defining universal energy and a personal union with the author of creation. Because I could look at it as a divine universal force, or I could look at it within and recognize that I am as one with the very creator that expresses divine energy into the world and universe. I would rather align myself with the purity of its origin instead of the altered form of its expression. I would rather not be in the expression of its corrupted nature. I'd rather be in the higher state, becoming the light in darkness, or the presence of calm within the storm.
Yeah.
So from all of that, that's where I believe the fruit is measured, is what's the evidentiary result, not giving words implication, or let's make you all millionaires. let's direct you back to the truth that the power exists within you, and let's see what your journey reveals as you become more of godly fruits. That's where I'm at.
Thank you, Larry. And with that, let me just say the word transition hits home for me, because every breath, in a way, is a transition. So it's not just a death, the life transition that we do, but every breath that we have, every thought that we have, every word that we speak inspires a transition. So I challenge everyone to just think forward and think of the fruits that you bear forward with the transitions that you make through your words that you speak, the thoughts that you think, and the breath that you take. So with that,
can I add to that?
Sure, of course, I knew you would.
In a covenanted love. It's like, how does this manifest in every single word, thought, and action? If people would just go to chapter 1, the 10 great words. Upon my path, you will find only these attributes within you. And it manifests that, like, even the transition of my thought, going from a thought of death, fear, or sadness into a prayer of life. Hopeful expectation. The transition is newness of life, not death. So even the thoughts of our mind become holy fruit for the sake of others and for the sake of ourselves. So for those of you that are now still with us, go to the website, order yourself the Covenanted Love. I am loving hearing the words that people are speaking about that book and how it's inspired them. And I'm just, like Deborah was saying earlier as well, that's not something that I sat down to write. God just presented it through me, and it came forth in 7 days. And then God had me rework it in this last year to kind of get some deeper personal experiences tied to it. But there's times where I'm like looking at it going, oh my God, reading it. Wow, now I see why people like it so much, because I've had to read it so many times going through it in the review process. So please feel free to check out with us. And the algorithm stuff of Facebook and all the places that we post on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. And we look forward to hearing from you. You can contact us through gracehealing.org, or, as Andreas said, gracehealing.video on YouTube. And we are so grateful for your presence and your willingness to search deeper within yourself to say, maybe there's an answer I'm missing, and maybe this instrument of grace healing could provide some of those answers for you. We are here and we love you dearly.
Awesome.
Yes.
Deborah, Larry, thank you very much for your time. And we'll talk soon again.
Yes.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.